All right, another episode of the Jimbo Nolan podcast. We got some breaking news that we're going to get into right away, very quickly. Hasson Reddick already requests a trade from the New York Jets. Joe Douglas comes out with a statement, already says, hey, nah, Hasson Reddick, we're not trading you. We've seen it in the past. We've seen wide receivers such as Denzel Mims. We've seen it before. Elijah Moore, where they request trades and Joe Douglas doesn't honor it right away. So I don't think Hasson Reddick is going to get what he wants right away. The Jets have the upper hand right now. I mean, I was going to talk about it on my pod anyways before this breaking news hit. But Hasson Reddick, basically, he can hold out all he wants, but the fines are going to keep hitting him. And the Jets, if they want to give him another contract, the money that he does get, it's going to bite him because he's going to lose out no matter what with all the fines he's getting. But in general, requesting a trade, that's some big news right there. Joe Douglas, breaking news there too, as well, saying to Hasson Reddick that he's not trading him. He's not going to honor that request. And it's interesting because does this kind of throw the dynamic of the Jets off? You know, I kind of want no locker room problems with the Jets. You know, that's what everybody doesn't want. And Hasson Reddick demanded a new contract. And quite frankly, the Jets, do I want them to give Reddick a new contract? Not really, because we got to pay guys pretty soon right now. We got Breece Hall, who I want to talk about today, Garrett Wilson, Sauce Gardner. Those are three young guys right there that the Jets have to pay very soon. So we can't afford to really pay Hasson Reddick, especially since Quentin Williams just got that big contract as well. So the Jets, they're in a tight spot here. What do? I don't know. I think Hasson Reddick is going to end up playing. I think he's not going to get a contract that he wants. I think he's going to get something, but I don't think he's going to get what he wants, man. I don't think he's going to get what he wants, but hopefully the Jets win this one. But Jets, let's go over what we're going over today, actually. So the Jets, they got the preseason win in their preseason debut of week 1, 17-10 against the Washington Commanders. The Giants, they beat the Lions 14-3. Drew Lock got injured. We saw the return of Tommy DeVito with that, playing a little bit more than expected. But Drew Lock didn't look too good even with his time on the field, only 4 of 10. We're going to get into that later. The Yankees, Judge, Juan Soto, and Giancarlo Stanton. Soto with 2 homers, and then Judge and Stanton with a homer each. They get the Rangers series, not a sweep, but 3-1 there. So Yankees doing well, trying to climb back up in that division. And right now they are tied with the Baltimore Orioles for first place in the AL East. So hopefully only up from here for the Yankees because they've been doing pretty well, actually. The bullpen's got to step it up because the bullpen stinks, especially Clay Holmes. Everybody knows Clay Holmes is giving Yankees fans agita, so we're going to get into that as well. And then the Mets, 4-6 on that West Coast strip. Half game behind the Atlanta Braves for that third wild card spot right now. So they got to step it up as well. So Yankees only up from here, hopefully. And the Mets, I mean, they have to go up because if they don't, then quite frankly, they're out of it. No playoffs for them. Yankees, at least they can get the wild card if they go a little bit down. But the Mets, they can't afford another stretch like they just had over these last 10 games, 4-6. They cannot have that. So we're going to get into all of that. But let's start off with the Jets. Hasson Reddick requesting the trade. But they do have depth without Hasson Reddick, because let's be real. I mean, Joe Douglas does kind of look like a moron a little bit, I guess you could say, because quite frankly, we could have kept what's his face? Why am I forgetting him? If anybody's went to the Eagles, Bryce Huff. We could have kept Bryce Huff, but he was good for us last year, especially in the pass rush. And when you factor in the fact that we had Quentin Williams, Jermaine Johnson, and then Will McDonald, who we haven't really seen do anything just yet. They've had high hopes for him for a while, so hopefully he can have a breakout year somewhat. But the Jets, you know, we saw last year, their defense is very good at rotating guys in and out. Quentin Williams, I mean, he had his probably best year last year, and he wasn't on the field as much as I'd say we want to see him, but Quentin Williams, I think, is going to take an even bigger step this year. So the Jets, they still got depth. And I think Jermaine Johnson is a very underrated player too, and I think he's going to be a breakout star for the Jets on the pass rush this year as well. And then you got to think too, we got a great secondary with DJ Reed, Sauce Gardner, CJ Mosley. We also have at the linebacker spot. So the the Jets defense is not an issue with or without Hasson Reddick. With Hasson Reddick, it's an A+. Without Hasson Reddick, it's an A. So we'll see what they do, but the bread and butter of this team is definitely going to be the defense, yes, but it's also going to be Aaron Rodgers. The offense cannot do what they did last year. The offense doesn't have excuses. If Aaron Rodgers gets hurt, so be it. Then Tyrod Taylor, you got to come in, and Jets still got to make the playoffs. And I'm really not wishing Rodgers to get hurt, obviously. No one is. No one should be. I want Rodgers to take this team to the Super Bowl. But quite frankly, he's 38 years old, 39 years old, close to 40. So I think Rodgers is definitely going to miss some time at some point of the season. So I'd say he plays like 15 games probably because he's going to miss at least 2 or 3 weeks. Let's be real. So maybe 14, 15 games from Rodgers. We'll see. But Tyrod Taylor is a very good backup. So that's the one plus for Joe Douglas outside of Hasson Reddick. But let's get into all of it. And Hasson Reddick, there's not really that much to talk about. I mean, we'll see what happens there, but it doesn't look like the ball's in his hands. It looks like the ball is in Joe Douglas in the Jets' hand. So we'll see what goes on, but definitely something to keep an eye on. But I think if he does come back, what you got to keep an eye on is that locker room because you don't want anything to cause the Jets harm this year, and the locker room especially because they got the talent. Garrett Wilson, Breece Hall, Mike Williams now too coming in. We're going to get into him, how he's going to complement Garrett Wilson. And then obviously Aaron Rodgers, the 4-time MVP, the revamped offensive line this year. You know, Joe Douglas did very good at getting that offensive line built up. Moses Johnson or whatever. Joe Pittman is the starting center now, which is finally good because last year he was rotating in and out of the guard spot, which is terrible. But going out there and getting the O-line revamped is very good for the Jets because Aaron Rodgers needs time in the pocket. And even if he goes down, Tyrod Taylor is going to need time in the pocket to get the ball into the hands of Breece Hall, who's a very good pass catcher. And we're going to get into that. He's one of the more underrated running backs in the game. Garrett Wilson, who, quite frankly, with Aaron Rodgers, I think he's going to take a major step forward. I mean, he's had 1,000-plus yard seasons with terrible starting QBs. Mike White, Zach Wilson, Chris Streveler. This is terrible quarterbacks for Garrett Wilson. He still gets the job done. So we're going to get into all that. But the defense, I'm really looking at to take the step to be the leading candidate of the team. So without Hasson Reddick, you know, like it's all over. We got the Jets can do is the defense. And Robert Saleh as a head coach, but the one thing he is a very good defensive coordinator. And the Jets, they had one of the best defenses in the league last year. And they scored just 20 points a game. And they win and they go to the playoffs last year. So that's that. Jets, they got a good Hasson Reddick, so don't be worried. But yeah, Aaron Rodgers. What is going on with Aaron Rodgers? Is he going to play in the final game of the preseason? Because reports are suggesting that he will be playing in that final preseason game against New York Giants. And this is going to be fun. Because I think he does need it. Just like Daniel Jones needs to play preseason too. We're going to get into that. But when you miss that much time last season, I think it's just good. It's just good to do it. Especially when you factor in, we got Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. You know, we want Xavier Gibson to take a step forward, Breece Hall. You know, these are guys who are not too familiar with Aaron Rodgers outside of 4 snaps? Like, they need more familiarity, especially with the Jets' schedule to start the season. Again, Monday Night Football. It's going to haunt us, so we'll see what happens. But I think Rodgers needs to play in that final preseason game. I'm not saying, you know, even a full half or a full quarter. I'm saying 2 or 3 drives, and that's it. Let's just get 2 or 3 drives. And the Giants, hopefully they're even starting their starters. So we get to see what our new offensive line looks like. Tyron Smith, you know, I want to see him at left tackle against some of the best pass rushers that the Giants have. And we're going to get into the Giants pass rushers soon too. Brian Burns, Azeez Ojulari, Dexter Lawrence, obviously. So they're going to be throwing guys out hopefully in week 3, and it's going to be a good test for the Jets actually. So that game is going to be something to keep an eye on for sure this season, because one, the Giants, they could have a playoff defense. And if Rodgers and Jones are both playing, we're going to see what both of them are made of, at least in the first few drives. So I hope they both play. We'll see what happens. But fingers crossed that Rodgers has a healthy season and starts off healthy in week 3 of the preseason against the New York Giants. And speaking of Rodgers, because I want to talk about this just before the season does start, because I'm not talking about this at all once the season starts. Does Aaron Rodgers need to make his trade worth it, basically? Like, if they don't win a Super Bowl this year or next year, because let's be real, do we think Rodgers is going to play next year? I think he's going to retire after this year. He's coming off a torn Achilles. He was just trying to run for vice president, apparently. Like, we don't know what Aaron Rodgers is doing. I think he does retire no matter what after this season. Because if he gets hurt, let's be real, he's done. He's done. He's not coming back. Father time hits. He's not Tom Brady. And if he survives this season and wins the Super Bowl, I think that's the best shot that he has at coming back next year. So what I'm saying is, if Rodgers don't win a Super Bowl, Rodgers ain't coming back next year. So is all this worth it if Rodgers doesn't win a Super Bowl? Because we gave up so much. Let's be real. We're putting off drafting top QBs in the draft. We're putting off a lot. So let's see. Let's see what happens. I think, the Jets are going to make the playoffs. I don't want to say they're going to win the Super Bowl. I'm not going to say they're going to win the Super Bowl. Why? Because I've never even seen the Jets get that close to the Super Bowl since Mark Sanchez. And let's be real, even with Mark Sanchez, the back of my head, I'm like, nah, it's not even worth it. They're not even going to make it. It's Mark Sanchez. Like, let's be real. So even with Aaron Rodgers, I'm saying that because it's the Jets. I mean, the Jets just always Jets somehow. They get Hasson Reddick. We're like, oh, yeah, this D-line is going to be even better. Hasson Reddick requests a trade, and he hasn't even been in the Jets uniform. Not a single snap played with the Jets. Like, the Jets will always Jets. So can the Jets break being the Jets? We'll see. We'll see. I think they go far. And I think, at least as a Jets fan, do we want them to even win the Super Bowl? Yes, we do. But even if they make the AFC Championship or win it in the Super Bowl, at least that's something to get the Jets going. Maybe Sauce stays. Maybe Garrett Wilson stays. We develop a young QB. Who knows? Who knows? But post Rodgers, we got to start thinking about it. We do have to start thinking about it soon. So Rodgers, does he have to win a Super Bowl to make it worth it? We'll see. I think he does. Kind of. I think he does. But we'll see. We'll speak. Speaking of expectations, let's talk Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson, wow, man. I mean, you look at Garrett Wilson's numbers over his career, 17 games. Not receptions, Jesus. 2,145 yards, 7 touchdowns, 34 games. So Garrett Wilson, over his career, getting over 2,000 yards throughout his first 2 years with that many terrible quarterbacks. Like, look at him. Zach Wilson, terrible. Chris Trevler, terrible. Mike White, I mean, he was fun to watch at some points in the season, but let's be real. Mike White ain't no Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see what happens with now Aaron Rodgers, because I do think Garrett Wilson is going to take a major step forward with Aaron Rodgers throwing in the ball. I mean, you see him arguing on the sideline, and everybody's like, wow, that's not a good thing. I think that's a good thing. And a lot of people do think that's a good thing, too. I think they think it's a good thing, too, because then they laugh it off at the end. And you know what happens? You just see a next highlight being Rodgers throwing Garrett Wilson a dime. Like, their connection is going to be good. I'm excited for the Wilson and Rodgers connection. And it's a young guy, a very young receiver, and a very old quarterback. So even post Rodgers, as long as we have Garrett Wilson, I'm going to be very happy to see how Wilson develops with a 4-time MVP. So I think Garrett Wilson, I still think he is the best player on the Jets. I think Garrett Wilson is the best player on the Jets. A lot of people say Quentin Williams, Sauce Gardner, Aaron Rodgers. I think it is Garrett Wilson, and I think it will really show. It's really going to show this year. So my expectations are very high for Garrett Wilson. I'm very high on Garrett Wilson, actually. I think he's a great player. Ohio State product. Coming out of there, he's a beast. For coming into the right away, he made an impact. Right away, right when he stepped foot on MetLife. That terrible turf. But yeah, I'm excited to see Wilson in year 3. I think he's going to take a major step forward. So, and especially with Mike Williams alongside of him, I want to get into that too, because Mike Williams, the physicality that he brings, and then Wilson with the route running, he's an elite route runner. Like, that's what Wilson does best. He's got speed, he's got hands, he can catch insanely. And Mike Williams, he's a physical wide receiver. So Rodgers, he has 2 guys that he can throw the ball to. If you want to double Wilson, go for it, because then Mike Williams in a one-on-one, at least in an intermediate passing game, like, good luck. Good luck. Because I think Mike Williams will catch it. I think he'll get it down. So how are you going to double Garrett Wilson? How are you going to double Garrett Wilson? And Garrett Wilson, he's a quick route runner. He's got hands. Once he gets the ball in open space, you never know what he can do. So I think Wilson is going to take an even bigger step forward, not just with Rodgers, but with Mike Williams. Because last year, he wouldn't have even had Mike Williams. He would have had the other guy from the Packers. What's his freaking face? Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb. And Lazard is still on the roster. We'll see what happens with that. But Xavier Gibson is the number 3 receiver, and I'm excited about him because he's freaking quick. And then when he gets the ball in the open field, and if he gets open, Rodgers will get him the ball. So all he has to do is get open. And we'll see what happens. Rodgers he has 3 very good wide receivers. So I think this offense is going to be great, especially when you factor in Breece freaking Hall, because Breece Hall, I think he's one of the most underrated running backs in football, if not the most. His 2023 stats, he didn't even get over 1,000 yards rushing, but you look at his scrimmage yards, he was top 10, 1,585 scrimmage yards, 9 total touchdowns. So Breece, I mean, you got to give him credit. He's one of the best running backs in football. And going into year 3, I mean, I expect 1,000 yards rushing as long as he's healthy. And not me just saying I expect this out of him. I'm just saying this is what he's probably going to do. He's going to rush for over 1,000 yards. He's going to factor in 500 plus receiving yards. And with Rodgers, maybe more. So Rodgers, we'll see what he does. If Rodgers stays healthy, team wins a lot. Even when scores, the Jets usually win. Like, let's take a look at the numbers when Breece Hall. Also, you guys, do you guys think he is the underrated running backs for football? Well, let's see. Breece Hall touchdown. $12. Breece Hall scores a touchdown. So being 12-12 with that, I mean, revamped offensive line. I mean, you got Tyron Smith coming in, probably one of the best left tackles of this generation. He's been the most reliable guy for the Dallas Cowboys for like a decade now. So Tyron Smith, I'm excited for him. You got John Simpson as well. That's another good pickup. Joe Douglas. So with the offensive line, with Breece Hall, with Aaron Rodgers, with Garrett Wilson, with Williams, with Xavier Gibson, this offense we will be just fine. Like I said before, they will be just fine. Just fine. I think one guy that is going to be on those stars. But I don't think he's a great head coach. He hasn't had good offenses. I mean, you had the as much as I want to say Zach Wilson sucks, he was the number 2 overall pick. Saleh, you were the head coach of that guy. And guess what happened with he did not do anything for Zach Wilson. I mean, at least Todd Bowles and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold looked better than Zach Wilson, and Bowles was a defensive guy. So, yeah, Saleh, he's going to be on the hot seat if they have a slow start. Even if they don't win a Super Bowl this year and Rodgers comes back next year, I think Saleh is going to be one that has to go. We're going to wrap up the Jets. Hopefully, Hasson Reddick doesn't get traded because I'd like to see that defensive line loaded with Quentin Williams and and Hasson Reddick. I mean, that's 2 top defensive linemen right there. Jermaine Johnson, factor in him. And then C.J. Mosley, Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. I mean, Tony Adams, hopefully he can take a step forward. Saleh's very big on him, so we'll see. But yeah, the Jets, obviously one of the best defenses in the league. And now that offense, everyone's going to be looking at it. Are they going to have a top offense? Because if they have a top offense, then Jets are in the prime. They're in a prime position to win the AFC East. So we'll see. But the Giants, they beat the Lions 14-3 in their preseason debut. Drew Lock going down with an injury. He's probably going to be out at least for a little bit in the regular season. So that means DeVito is going to be the QB2. So he's right back in the mix. Daniel Jones, I mean, if he goes down, which is, it's possible, he's a very injury-prone guy. I'm not wishing an injury on him, just like I said before. But I think Jones, we need to see him play in the preseason. I think, based off what DeVito did, he's 8 for 15 and 92 yards. And based off what Drew Lock did, I think the story with DeVito is just simple. He's got to be the QB2 going forward. But with Jones, I'm looking at Daniel Jones and saying, hey, this is it. You're the guy. We got to see at least 3,800 yards out of you passing and a few more rushing, if not 4,000 yards. So are we going to see 25-plus touchdowns, or are we going to see 15-plus touchdowns? What is Daniel Jones going to do? What Daniel Jones are we going to see? Are we going to see the guy that's a game manager, or are we going to see the guy that played against the Minnesota Vikings in round 1 of the postseason in 2022? Which guy are we going to see? I think we could see the guy that played against the Vikings in that playoff game. I really think we could, but is he going to do it consistently? I don't know. We will see. But Jones is talented. There's no doubt about it. There is no doubt about it. But we saw that offensive line. I mean, I get it, and half of them weren't going to be starters, but some of them might be. They're going to be in the rotation a lot. So Drew Lock got hurt because their offensive line suck. Malik Neighbors, he didn't get the ball in that first game because the offensive line sucks. They don't have time to get him the ball. Half the time they were dishing it off to the running back. Was it smart? Yeah, because that's what you need to do when half the defensive line is coming right at you right after you call hike. So I hope Daniel Jones can move a little bit. He's coming off a big injury, so we'll see. But Jones is definitely talented. He's got it. He's definitely got what it takes to be a starting quarterback in the NFL and lead a team to a postseason. But with this offensive line, it's year in and year out. They're terrible. Terrible. It's always the same thing. But we will see if that preseason week 1 was just a warm up and they get better. I mean, at the end of the day, they did win, and DeVito didn't look too bad. He only got sacked once. Drew Lock, 4 for 10, 17 yards with an interception. He did terrible. But we're going to take a look at DeVito. DeVito, he is probably going to be the QB too. So if Jones does go down or Jones struggles, if Jones does struggle, do we see Daboll making a pull and going to DeVito? Because we've seen him rip apart Jones. We don't know. I don't know. We'll see. But it's definitely something we got to keep an eye on. But Tommy DeVito is definitely back in the fold. And I think Daboll should definitely bank on DeVito being the QB too. But one guy I want to talk about, because Saquon left, blah, blah, blah. He went to the Eagles, when he's a trader, whatever. Eric Gray going off. The running back duo, actually, as well. We're going to get into that. But Eric Gray specifically, 98 total yards in the passing and rushing game combined, 2 touchdowns in that week 1. Malik Neighbors, yes, he was silent, but this guy did go off, and that's very exciting. That's very intriguing. Because if the Giants do get that run game going, then we know that they can win the ball game, because the defense, we're going to get into the defense. The defense is actually surprised. I think the defense is one of the most underrated defenses in football. We're going to get into that. But if the run game gets going and the defense is good, the Giants have the potential to make the playoffs. And I think Eric Gray maybe he could be a good combination. I mean, you take a look at the other guy. I can't even say his name right. I might butcher it. I'm sorry if I butcher this guy's name. Where'd it go? But he also went off, though. He had a lot more carries than Eric Gray. He had 63 yards. Dante Miller, 63 yards rushing. A 19-yard rush as well. Eric Gray had a 48-yard rush. That was big time. But yeah, the Giants, and he was also the leading receiver too, 46 yards, a lot of those dish offs. So yeah. And then obviously Malik Neighbors not getting the ball. And Jalen Hyatt only got the ball once as well. But you got to get the ball into those 3 guys' hands, specifically the receivers. You know, you got Wan'Dale Robinson, Jalen Hyatt, and then the star, obviously, Malik Neighbors, who came down with an ankle injury, but I don't think it's going to be a big deal. It's apparently not that big of a deal. But yeah, the offense is what you got to keep an eye on, because if you can get the ball to those 3 guys, and Eric Gray is going, and Dante, what's his name again? Dante Miller is going as a little duo. We'll see. Maybe it's, just a one game wonder from those 2, but we'll see. We will see. The defense is what you definitely got to keep an eye on, because Dexter Lawrence, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Azeez Ojulari, and then Deontay Banks. Hopefully he can take his Giants defense. It is loaded. Okay. The Giants, they're going to be, I think, slept on going into this season. And I think if they win games, we'll see it's going to be because of the defense. I mean, they only let up, I know it's preseason, but 3 points. 3 points. We saw 4 sacks in that first game. 4 sacks. And I get it. It's a preseason game and it's week 1. But this year, what did the Giants want to do? And that's with their backups. A lot of those guys were backups. So, Shane Bowen, that's exactly what, watching Hard Knocks is what he wanted to do. He wanted Brian Burns. Why? Because he wanted one of the best pass rushers in football. And we are seeing that. We saw that in week 1 of the preseason with the backups. I get it. It's with the backups and it's against the backups, but I think we're going to see that, obviously, with Azeez Ojulari, Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. He wanted to make Dexter Lawrence's life easier by bringing in a guy like Brian Burns. 2 studs. The Giants' defense is underrated. I think they might if they make the playoffs, don't be shocked. Don't be shocked. I'm not saying they're going to win the division, because the Eagles are still up there. Cowboys, don't sleep on them as well. But the Giants defense, we cannot sleep on them going into this year. We cannot. But all eyes will be on Daniel Jones this year, obviously. All eyes will be on Daniel Jones, just like all eyes will be on Aaron Rodgers for the Jets. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to get into the New York Mets and New York Yankees. We're going to start it off with the Yanks. Definitely some they play tonight. Again, 7-10, but went taking 3 out of 4 against the Rangers. But definitely some concerns with that bullpen. Offense is spectacular. Stanton, Soto, and Judge all homer in last night's game against the Rangers to cap off that series victory. But man, the pitching, specifically the bullpen, it's got to get going. So we're going to talk about just that next on the Jimbo Nolan pod. Stay with us, and we will be right back. One guy who's been a lot more consistent than he was last year, who I want to get into on the offensive end, Anthony Volpe. I mean, he's living up to the hype that he had last year. Obviously, he performed well on the defensive side, capturing that Gold Glove award, hitting over 20 home runs. But this season, a little bit less home runs, but the batting average has seen an increase. The on-base percentage has seen an increase. And then obviously his speed on the base paths always kills opposing teams. So what do you think Anthony Volpe is doing differently this year than last that he's seen so much more success from?
Yeah, well, first in the field, he's always been great defender. So I don't think there was much to improve there. But on the offensive side, I think he's really just trying to hit the ball the other way more, be more consistent, make more solid contact. And he's been able to do it. I love when you try to make adjustments, you realize what was working, what wasn't working, and you make an adjustment in the offseason, and you come back and it works. That's something you love to see. So he's been definitely, obviously, with the higher average and getting on base more. But when you look at the actual mechanics of the swing, he's leveling out a little bit more. The bat path is more through the zone. He's not trying to pull the ball as much and lift it. It seems like the home runs come, but he's able to really go with the pitch the other way. And that's what you need. Out of this offense, the way it's structured, if you have a guy like that at the top of the lineup getting on base, you have Juan Soto to follow, Aaron Judge to follow. Those guys are the ones who are going to really drive the ball even more in the air. But you have a guy like Volpe who could at least get on base with a single or, just tap one to the opposite field, kind of like Jeter in a way where he had that inside-out swing. It helps out so much. So just understanding the lineup, how it's constructed, and then seeing how he's been able to make adjustments to then fit that lineup even better. That's why I think the Yankees have been pretty solid on the offensive side, at least with the first half of the lineup.
Yeah, I mean, Aaron Judge, he has insane numbers, and we're going to get into him in a little bit. His last 50 games, he has 55 RBIs, and I think, like you alluded to, a big part of that is because Volpe is doing such a great job hitting in front of those guys. I feel like he's kind of realized, okay, I got 2 of the best hitters in baseball right behind me. All I got to do is get on base, and they can do the rest. Like you said, Aaron Judge and Juan Soto, they're going to clean up in that lineup. So I think it's been great for Volpe to kind of change his ways. Like you said, those adjustments that he made over the offseason, they're really paying off, not just for him, but for the team overall. I think that's he's been a big reason, and I think an underrated piece on this team. I mean, obviously Juan Soto and Aaron Judge, and now Garrett Cole coming back, and even Louis Hill is the story, but Anthony Volpe at the top of that lineup doing what he was kind of drafted to do, I think is awesome. And especially him being a Yankee fan growing up, it just makes it even better.
Yeah. Now it's exciting to see. And obviously everyone's pulling for the guy. And Anthony's a Jersey guy. He's been around here for a while and everyone wants to support him. And just seeing how he's been able to interact with the team and bring them up, it's awesome to see. Because there's a lot of hype. Look, there's a lot of pressure, not only in New York with the Yankees, but if you're somebody with the kind of prospect hype, you could easily fall into that trap. You look at any team, any of your top prospects, their heads are being blown up. Everyone's sending them stuff. They're being hyped up all the time. But you need to know how to regulate that and know how to handle your emotions and handle those distractions. And that's the key, I think, to playing in New York. If you can't handle that, it's going to be difficult. But if you can, like he's been able to, it obviously it could definitely pay off.
Yeah. And now I think he's really been seeing great success because, like you said, he's comfortable now, and he's found himself in this lineup, especially in a great lineup. So let's get into those other guys. Woo! All right, let's get back to it. The Yankees tied for first place in the AL East now, after taking three out of the last 4 games from the Rangers, the defending World Series champs, who really haven't been playing like the World Series champs. And, Jacob deGrom, let's fix that Keith Hernandez jersey, that beautiful jersey. Yeah, the Yankees, they've been playing a little bit like they have to start the season, besides the fact that their bullpen stinks, and we're going to get into that. Let's actually start with that. We'll start with the negative part. Let's put it right. Let's be blunt. Words talk, numbers scream. Let's talk numbers. Yankees, first 69 games of the season, 2.85 ERA team-wise, right? Last 50 games of the season, 5.09 ERA. Why have they stunk? Yeah, I think right there it shows you why. They're pitching, specifically the bullpen. Clay Holmes, you can't even trust him. You can't really trust anybody coming out of that bullpen. So we'll see what they do there, but because they really need answers. Like, they need answers in that bullpen. Somebody needs to step up. Not just someone. A lot of people need to step up in that bullpen. The starter, Stroman, he had a decent start the other day, but the bullpen just last night, they let up what? 5 runs? Let's see right here. Yeah, they let up 6 runs in 4 innings last night. So it's definitely an issue right there. The lineup is definitely heating up, though. Gleyber Torres, over his last 25 games, he's batting .286 with a .739 OPS, 12 RBIs. If Gleyber keeps that up, well, then quite frankly, the Yankees lineup will be just fine. Everybody's worried about that Yankees lineup, but Austin Wells is fine. Anthony Volpe, he's been sustainable as of late. He hasn't been too bad. He hasn't been great. Would love to see him get going like he was in the beginning of the season. That would be great, but then again, we'll see. But Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Juan Soto, those 3 guys specifically bringing the power. Judge, obviously, on another level than anybody in the entire league, and we're going to get into that. He's got 43 games to hit, 21 home runs to pass that 62 home run mark. And I think he just might, because he is Aaron Judge, and he is just unthinkable. He does the unthinkable all the time. And Juan Soto, he's having the best season of his career. You look at his numbers: 304, 30 home runs, 82 RBIs, 1.018 or 1.018 OPS. Jesus. But yeah, he's having the best season of his career. 82 RBIs already, and we're only in August, the beginning of August. We're not even halfway through August. And then Judge, 328 batting average while hitting 42 home runs, 106 RBIs, 1.161 OPS. He could end his season today, and he might still win the AL MVP. Those numbers are ridiculous. Over an 1,100 OPS. Judge, I think he is the best hitter in the game. There's no doubt about it. But we got to start. He's just got to get a big playoff performance, lead the Yankees to a World Series win. And it's got to be this year, because you got Garrett Cole, who's not getting younger. Aaron Judge himself not getting any younger. Juan Soto, who knows what's going to happen in free agency. I think they got to bring him back based off what Soto's doing this year, hitting in front of Judge. You see it. Like Soto, he was a 270, 280, 290 guy. He never really hit over 300 for this much power, too. It's only the 3rd time in his career he had 30 home runs, and he's already got 80 RBIs. Why do you think he's hitting in front of Aaron Judge? They have to pitch to Soto, and Soto is a guy who picks his swings wisely. He's not going to go chase. He doesn't. He works the count. He gets on base, and sometimes getting on base, especially when Aaron Judge hits behind you, is the best thing to do. And you got to throw him strikes, because you don't want Juan Soto on base for Aaron Judge, because then both of them get on base. So then figure that one out. And then if Stanton's now hitting too, Stanton, the season he's having is actually pretty good. You got to give Stanton credit. He's really being a factor in this Yankees lineup now since his return. And that's no surprise there. The Yankees have been winning a lot more since Stanton has been back. So the lineup is just fine, but it's the ERA. The team ERA that you got to look at right here. The last 50 games, 5.09. First 69 games of the season, 2.85. But you look at the offensive numbers for them. They're first in on-base percentage, second in slugging percentage, first in OPS, second in home runs. So it's the pitching. It's definitely the pitching. But yeah, Jazz Chisholm has also been a great addition for this Yankees lineup as well. 296 batting average, 7 home runs with a 1.049 OPS with the Yankees so far. I mean, are these going to be sustainable? I don't know. I mean, I think the 290 batting average potentially in this lineup, when you got Judge and Soto in the same lineup, that's good protection right there for Jazz Chisholm. It's better than he ever had before. And two, I think sometimes a change of scenery just does get the best out of the best version of Jazz. Then the Yankees line is going to be even better. It's going to be even better. But one guy you got to take a look at is Volpe because he's hitting 195 over his last 10 games. So definitely keep an eye on that. But I mean, when you look at Soto and Judge, I mean, this team is undoubtedly going to make the playoffs, and I think is going to be the reason that they win the AL East. I think they're going to get by the Baltimore Orioles. I really think they do. .304 batting average, 30 home runs. And then you look at Judge. Judge's numbers are ridiculous. Yo, what's up, Yuki? How we doing, man? Judge hitting 328, dude. 42 home runs, 106 RBIs. Like, that is unthinkable. Unthinkable. But the Yankees, we'll see what they do. They got to continue this little run that they're going on right now. They got the White Sox tonight. Louis Hill back on the mound. 3.06 ERA on the year. 12-5. He's been going as of late. He had a little midseason funk, but his last start against the Angels, only 2 hits allowed over 5 innings. Against Philadelphia, he kind of got roughed up a little bit. Only 5 hits, though, over 5.1 innings of work. 3 earned runs against the Mets. He kind of dominated us a little bit, only allowing 1 earned run across 5 innings, allowing 4 hits. And then against Baltimore, a big start there. 5 hits, 6 innings of work, and then 1 earned run allowed. So he's been on a tear as of late. Really hasn't had a bad start since the Cincinnati start, and then the New York Mets start, and then the Baltimore Orioles start. So really 3 starts he had that were terrible. July 20th, 26th, and then June 20th, June 26th, and July 2nd against Baltimore, New York, and Cincinnati. Other than that, Hill's been pretty lights out, so it's going to be good. Hopefully he can help the Yankees continue this little win streak that they're on right now. What do they got? Actually, not a winning streak. They actually lost in that doubleheader yesterday when they split it. But hopefully they can build a win streak right now. But Yankees 6-4 over their last 10 games. But Yankees 6-4 over their last 10, heading into a series against the Chicago White Sox. But the Mets, on the other hand, quite frankly, they are the opposite. 4-6 across their last 10 games. Just sitting a half game back of that third wild card spot in the National League. And we got to start winning some games. Mets fans, we got to start winning some freaking games because getting swept, it was not fun. Not fun going 4-6 on the West Coast trip. And there's a lot that we got to talk about with the Mets. Pete Alonso's kind of sucks, especially with runners in scoring position, runners on in general. Lindor, I do want to give him some props. Talk about how he's put himself in the MVP conversation. And then obviously the pitching. We don't have an ace. What are we going to do about that? And bullpen too. Our bullpen is actually a positive point. It's a strong point for the Mets. So we got to give credit there too to David Stearns building up a good bullpen for the Mets. Jose Budo showing out, man. And then hopefully Reed Garrett and Sean Reed Foley, they can come back and help us out. And then Edwin Diaz, he's been actually pretty well. And then Huskar Brasbowen is back too. So we got a lights out bullpen, hopefully heading into a tight playoff race right now. We are a half game back of that third NL wildcard spot. We got the Atlanta Braves ahead of us, and then San Diego and Arizona, who's coming up on our schedule too. So that's going to be 2 big series back to back on another West Coast trip. What's up, Yuki? What we got? We were supposed to get playing the Angels and the Rockies, but they were the Mets. Yep. What? Yuki, I didn't understand that one, to be honest. We were supposed to get Fat playing I think that's a typo from my man Yuki, which I really never see. But hopefully we'll see what he means there. But we sit a half game back right now of that third NL wildcard spot. Of course, it's the Atlanta Braves, but the Braves have been struggling just like the Mets have. We're 4-6 over their our last 10. And the Braves, let's see who they got. They got the San Francisco Giants tonight. The Giants 61-59. Braves 3-7 in their last 10, so also struggling as well. Wegovy is a weight loss medicine. There we go. I had no clue what that meant. But yeah, the Braves 3-7 in their last 10, man. They're struggling. They're struggling just like the Mets. So hopefully they struggle and we can start picking it up. Because tomorrow, Mets are back to playing baseball against the Oakland A's. And the Oakland A's, they've sucked all year long, 50-69, fifth in the ALS. We got Paul Blackburn pitching. Paul Blackburn, who actually had a pretty good start for the Mets in his last start. He went 6 innings, only 5 hits, 1 earned run allowed. And then also against the Angels, he was not too shabby as well. 6 innings, 1 earned run allowed. And then against the Angels was his last start when he was with the A's. So he's pitching against his former team. He got pretty beat up in that start. But his last 2 starts with the Mets have been actually pretty good. So if Blackburn can continue that, we should be okay. And then the A's 13-8 since the All-Star game is what Yuki just mentioned. Thank you, Yuki, for mentioning that. So it's not the same old A's, I guess, since the All-Star break, but I mean, we're going up against Ross Stripling, who's 2-10 this year with a 5.64 ERA. Paul Blackburn, who only has 2 earned runs across 12 innings in his first 2 starts with the Mets. So I'm hoping that Blackburn can continue that. The Mets lineup can get going. They can beat up Stripling. Let's take a look at some of the guys' career numbers versus Stripling, actually. Like, why not let's do that. Let's see what we're working with. Maybe we'll get some best for fans. Lindor stats versus Ross Stripling. Lindor is only 1 for 3 in 4 plate appearances. Let's see, Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso's 1 for 6. 1 for 6. So, of course, and we're going to get into Pete Alonso, but scratch that. Ross Stripling, I mean, I think we should beat him up. Hopefully, Lindor being 1 for 3. That's 333 right there. So, I mean, 1 for 3 is not a big, it's not a big base to look from, but it is what it is. I think Lindor, based off what he's done across his last 50 games, we can give him a lot of credit because Lindor, he's put himself in that MVP conversation in the National League. We talked about the bullpen being great, and that's been one of the reasons that the Mets have been great over these past few months. But Francisco Lindor, putting himself in that MVP conversation, I think that's really the reason that the Mets have been going, because this offense has been lifted because of him. Brandon Nimmo has slowed down. Pete Alonso has been not great all year. JD Martinez is slowing down. But one guy who, since we took off in June, one guy who hasn't slowed down is Francisco Lindor. He's put himself in the MVP conversation. He's got this year, you look at his numbers, 260 batting average, 22 home runs, 67 RBIs, 24 stolen bases. He's well on his way to his another consecutive 30-30 home run stolen base season. He might get 100 RBIs again for the second time in the last 3 years. And then you look at his numbers in the last 50 games, and it shows you why he put himself in the MVP conversation and lifted the Mets into the playoff race. It's because he's hit 301 across his last 50 games, along with a 902 OPS, 11 home runs, and 35 RBIs. Lindor, for a good amount of time right now, has been one of the best players in the National League. He's a top 3 player in the National League this year for sure. It's Shohei Ohtani, and then you got to put Lindor up there at 2 or 3. Let's be real. Ohtani, I'd say, is definitely going to take away the NL MVP this year as long as he stays healthy. That's just that. But Lindor, you got to give him credit, putting himself up there as a top 3 player. I mean, look at the numbers. 3-0, like, you want to talk about his batting average? All right, 301 over his last 50 games. He brought it up to over 260 in this last series. He was the only guy who really hit in this series. And then 22 home runs. He's doing it. Second on the team with home runs. So, yeah. Another guy who's been a positive in the Mets lineup, when he comes back, we got to talk about moving him up in the lineup, is Mark Vientos. Mark Vientos is having a great year. You look at Mark Vientos' numbers, he's got 17 home runs on the year, an OPS well over 800, 270 batting average, 324 on base percentage, 860 OPS, 17 home runs. Can we move this guy up in the lineup? I really do think it's time we got to talk about moving Mark Vientos up in the lineup. Stop hitting him 7th or 6th. We got to move him up. And now I'm not no MLB manager, but this would be a lineup that I would suggest if someone ever came up to me. Lindor, keep him in the leadoff spot because since he's been there, he's been one of the best hitters. He's probably the best leadoff hitter in the sport right now. So Lindor short leading off, and then I'd put Mark Vientos hitting second right behind him at third. Nimmo in left hitting third. Martinez in the cleanup spot. Jesse Winker and Starlin Marte. Once Marte comes back, platoon those two. Then I'd put Pete Alonso hitting sixth. Then Jeff McNeil behind him. Francisco Alvarez because you need some pop in that bottom of the order as well. And then Bader being that second leadoff guy hitting ninth in center for the defense, obviously. So, yeah, that would be my proposed Mets lineup. But Mark Vientos, I think we got to talk about moving him up in the lineup. I mean, his numbers this year are phenomenal. 270 batting average, 860 OPS, 17 home runs in just 70 games. I mean, Pete Alonso, he has what, 25? And how many? So Vientos got 17 and 70. Alonso's got 25 and 118. So Vientos, I mean, you got to put it up there. He's probably one of the best hitters on the team this year. Consistent, too. So you got to move Vientos up in the lineup, especially now that the playoff race is coming. I don't care how long you've been here. Vientos deserves to be moved up in the lineup. He is one of the best hitters in this lineup, right behind Lindor, I'd say right now. Once he's back, once he's healthy, put him at number 2, or at least put him in the top 5. Put him in the top 5 because you can't have him hitting below that. But yeah, we do got to talk about Pete Alonso because Pete Alonso kind of stinks right now, all year. Should we move him down to the lineup? You just heard me say yes. So yeah, I do think we got to talk about moving Pete Alonso down the lineup. I also think the Mets will be letting him walk in the offseason. My recent article on FanSided, you can go check it out on FanSided. It is 3 Mets that probably won't be coming back in the offseason that did survive the trade deadline. 3 of those guys being Jose Quintana, who's actually been pretty well, and the only reason he's really going to go is just because of his age. And we got pitching prospects that are good. And Manaea is probably more likely candidate to come back. There's some big chip free agents coming up. You know, Bregman, others, Blake Snell, another one. Obviously, wants to Steve Cohen. I hate to say that, but it is. And the only reason I'm saying that is because that's why I think Pete Alonso is going to walk away in free agency. Somebody is going to give him a lot of money, but it's not going to be the Mets. It's not going to be the Mets. And here's why. Let's get into these numbers. Pete Alonso this season in late inning pressure with runners on base. 97 batting average. 97. That's terrible. 429 OPS. Terrible. Pete Alonso with the bases loaded. 111 batting average and 4 RBIs this season. Terrible. And this is the stat that kind of kills me the most. This is the stat that kills me the most with Pete Alonso. 14 of his 25 home runs are with the bases empty. Like, that is bad. Alonso is just not clutch. He isn't clutch. It's good that he can give us a solo home run. Yes, when we need to run in a crucial spot, I guess, for a solo spot, yeah. But with runners on, he's not very dependable. He's just not. So if Alonso wants to come back and wants to be basically, because Francisco Lindor, he's the guy that the Mets are going to build around. It's him and Nimmo, Vientos, and Alvarez. Those are the 4 guys that will likely stay. Everybody else, we don't know. We really do not know. So we'll see what happens. But I think we got to start talking about Pete Alonso replacements because I don't think he's going to be coming back. I really don't, especially these numbers. We'll go over it one more time. I mean, with laid in and pressure, with runners on, 97 batting average, 429 OPS. That basically means Pete Alonso in the clutch sucks. We need to see more for the Mets over the next few weeks. We got a few big series. We got luck that team. The Marlins also sub 500, but then we got the Orioles. They're coming to us, so we got to beat them up. Hopefully, they're the best team, one of the best teams in the American League this year. So we got to hopefully get them because we got a tough series against the Padres and the Diamondbacks, who both those teams are ahead of us in that wild card spot. And we want to jump them. We got to beat them. And then the White Sox we got, and then the Red Sox, the Reds, Blue Jays, Phillies, Nationals, Phillies, Braves, Brewers. And then just like that, are we in the playoffs or are we out? We don't know. We'll find out. Let's go, Mets. So Yankees play tonight. Let's see what Louis Hill can do tonight against the White Sox. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. Yankees tonight. Let's keep an eye on him. Hill versus Kai Busch, who is 0-1 this year in 4 innings of work against the Oakland A's. He actually allowed 3 runs with 5 walks. So Yankees heavy favorite tonight against the White Sox, who are 28-91. And Louis Hill, hopefully he can get his confidence up against a terrible team like the White Sox. Yeah, that's that. That's all I got for you today. We're going to talk some Knicks on that next pod too as well, because we got to throw them into the mix. Jalen Brunson, McCall Bridges, Julius Randle. We're going to mix it all in. And then the NFL, it's heating up. Almost by the time I go live on the next pod, we're going to be talking about the Giants versus Jets a little bit more, because the Giants versus Jets is coming up, baby. It is coming up. And Rodgers reportedly supposed to play in that week preseason game. And hopefully Daniel Jones, we're going to see him play some preseason snaps as well. But yeah, it was good today. Watching right now. Guys, I'm out. Oh my. And the